dispositivo ustedes estén utilizando, así van a ser las opciones que tengan para interpretación y para el chat.
nhớ rằng sẽ sẽ tao này sẽ là công bé để lúc trong sĩ thả mà nó giờ hai tên này sao có tao cho lúc trong sĩ thả nó mới chịu lúc mong thọ nên cả cho khỏi interpretation nếu mà đi sáng nên một trongห้องเนี่ยnó cũng chịu lúc cho nên thì lý do nó sĩ ta lên đây còn đây nhớ tới sẽเนี่ยnó nên sĩ ya cho những thứ xử lý computer lo sĩ sao tông lo sĩ thả vậy đó.
Soการเรียนตามอินเทอร์เน็ตนี่เกี่ยวกับการถอดนะโดยเนี่ยการเข้ารวมขนมถนัดนี้เนี่ยอันไหนอยากเอากี่ถอดให้แล้วนี่เนี่ยกำปุงปลาอุปกรณ์ไว้ได้คอมพิวเตอร์โทรศัพท์ได้หรือมือกระตาปลัด
So how do we use the question and answer feature? If you're on a computer, there will be a Q&A icon that you can select to ask questions. If you're on a cell phone or a tablet, you'll select the 3 dots that have a more option and be able to select the Q&A on your cell phone or tablet.
Para poder utilizar la función de preguntas y respuestas, si ustedes están utilizando una computadora, en la parte baja de su computadora van a ver un icono de preguntas y respuestas. Nada más tienen que hacer clic en él. Si están en un celular o una tableta, tienen que pulsar los 3 puntitos que van a ver a la parte baja de su pantalla para poder encontrar el icono de preguntas y respuestas.
do hai tiệt có mua lúc sợ con cả công bé nhớ cho họ có lúc computer có một cho họ kiều này con tàu có cho lùi nhớ cho họ bé mà li mất xài luôn mong cho loạn kỹ cho lại sẽ đợi có sẽ đợi thế liền nó cho do hai tiệt có lo công bé để lúc sợ tông lo xin để họ chạp để có nhẹ lúc bỏ và nếu mà bé tên còn đợi cho có một cho họ hai tiệt muốn gì có mà li xài còn đợi nhưng mà li cho có một cho họ khi hai tiệt có yếu hai cho lùi tàu có cho lùiจะซาโตโรเป้มาจังนะ
របៀបប្រើលក្ខណៈពិសេសសំណួរនិងចម្លើយបើអ្នកប្រើកុំព្យូទ័រលេខដាក់សួរចំនួននិងចម្លើយនឹង Q&A ហ្នឹងនៅខាងឆ្វេងដៃនៅខាងលើបើសិនជាអ្នកប្រើ telephone ដៃអ្នកត្រូវចុចមួយវាមាន3ចំណុចរង្វង់3ខាងក្រៅខាងស្ដាំដៃហ្នឹងដែលវាសួរថាឲ្យយើងអាចជ្រើសរើសថែមទៀតហើយបើអ្នកមើលប្រើ tablet វាមានសញ្ញាណាដូចសញ្ញានៅខាងក្រហមនោះដាក់ Q&A ហ្នឹងសំណួរនឹងចម្លើយ so ហើយបើអ្នកមានសំណួរអីពេលណាថ្នាក់នេះចប់យើងអាចសួរនឹងចម្លើយពេលចុងក្រោយបំផុតមុននឹងចប់ថ្នាក់
And to begin interpretation on your computer, there will also be an icon, a little world icon. You can select the interpretation, as well as for the cell phone and tablet. You'll need to again press the 3 dots for the more to be able to select interpretation. And just know if you're an English speaker, you will also need to select interpretation.
Para poder seleccionar la interpretación, también si están en una computadora, en la parte baja de su pantalla van a ver el icono de un globo y van a poder seleccionar su idioma de preferencia, en este caso español. Si están en un celular o en una tableta, van a ver los 3 puntitos que están abajo donde dice more o más y van a poder escoger el idioma de su preferencia. Las personas que están en inglés también tienen que escoger su idioma.
ที่จิตาลินได้เท่ากันก็จะเขาก็ลูกคอมพิวเตอร์นิวยอร์กเฮียจะก็หายเตียโมลูเดียเตยอจะเขาก็เนี่ยลุงได้เนี่ยเจ้าก็มุดจะเขาใส่เตียใช้ลูเท่าก็เนี่ยเขาใช้ลุงได้ก็เนี่ยมองนี่ที่เหลือเจ้าก็มุดจะเขาเจอกันมาเลยอยู่นอไปใช้จะลูว่าไปหายนู่นนอยอจะเขานะ
របៀបចូលកន្លែងបកប្រែបើយើងប្រើកុំព្យូទ័រយើងមានកន្លែងនោះវាដាក់សញ្ញាឃើញលេខក្រហមនៅខាងឆ្វេងដៃហ្នឹងណាព្រួយក្រហមហ្នឹងថាដាក់ជាភាសាអង់គ្លេសហ្នឹងដាក់ថា interpretation ហ្នឹងនឹងកន្លែងបកប្រែបើយើងប្រើលេខ telephone ដៃណាឬមួយក៏យើងប្រើលេខ tablet ហ្នឹងយើងត្រូវជ្រើសរើសចុច3ហ្នឹងណាហើយហ្នឹងវាឲ្យយើងជ្រើសរើសវាមានថាបន្ថែមទៀតហើយដល់ពេលហ្នឹងហើយយើងរើសភាសាណាដែលយើងចង់បកប្រែហើយទោះបីអ្នកនិយាយភាសាអង់គ្លេសក្តីអ្នកត្រូវតែជ្រើសរើសភាសាអង់គ្លេស
Great. Thank you, everybody. We can go ahead now and select interpretation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can turn that feature on.
Ok, ahora vamos a encender la interpretación. Va a dejar de compartir su pantalla para poder encender la interpretación y puedan escogerla.
Nhà linh đã bây giờ mà còn nó cho ta bây giờ nhẹ họ và nên các ta cho họ sai họ interpretation đó chỉ bây mà còn ta nên nhẹ còn tới thì cho nên cho trong mà bây giờ lúc cho nên nó trong tao
ឥឡូវនេះដល់ពេលដែលយើងជ្រើសរើសភាសាដែលយើងចង់ស្ដាប់ហើយសូមចូលទៅដល់កន្លែងជ្រើសរើសភាសាហើយនឹងខ្ញុំនឹងបិទអេក្រង់ខ្ញុំឈប់ចែកព័ត៌មាននៅលើអេក្រង់ទៀតហើយអ្នកជ្រើសរើសភាសាណាអ្នកចង់បានស្ដាប់នឹងលើសូមអរគុណ
All right. Interpretation has been turned on. Please select your language. Welcome again, and I'll pass it off to Catherine.
Thank you, Cynthia, and good evening, everyone. I'm Catherine, the director of the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition, or CVAC for short. And on behalf of CVAC and our awesome co-sponsors this evening, welcome and thank you for joining us. Thank you to Central California Environmental Justice Network, Little Manila Rising, the Fresno Center, and Central California Asthma Collaborative for working with us on this evening's webinar, and to all of our panelists and speakers, as well as all of you joining us at home. The focus for tonight's conversation is about the impact of catastrophic climate-fueled wildfires in California and its connections to our air pollution problems and public health. The Central Valley Air Quality Coalition since the early 2000s has been coordinating efforts to raise awareness about the severe air pollution problems our region suffers from, and to advocate for policies that will restore clean air and prioritize equity, focusing on the most overburdened and impacted environmental justice communities where Black and Indigenous peoples and people of color are concentrated next to sources of air pollution. The Public Policy Institute of California recently released their latest polling results showing that 55% of people in the state of California say that the threat of wildfires is a big problem in their part of the state, and 30% say somewhat of a problem, showing that the vast majority of us, unfortunately, are now acutely aware of this vicious cycle that we've come into during the drier and hotter parts of the season, that we have these extreme wildfires. So my goal for this evening is just to offer some quick welcome and introductory comments, and then hand it off to our panelists. And again, we welcome questions from the audience in the chat or using the Q&A feature, and we will have a brief closing as we wrap up this evening. For those that are interested and would like to, please feel welcome to introduce yourself in the chat. Some suggestions of information that might be worth sharing are your name, where you're joining us from this evening, if there's any organization you're affiliated with, anything else you'd like to share with the group, please feel free to drop it into the chat. I also want to acknowledge that the work that we are doing is on unceded tribal lands, and to acknowledge and respect the sovereignty of the Indigenous peoples living in the state of California. I also want to acknowledge that while intense wildfires have caught people by surprise in recent years, they have always been a part of California's landscape, and that our native populations managed the environment using prescribed burns historically. And it was during colonization, when Europeans arrived, that the choice was made to supplant prescribed burns with fire suppression, which has resulted in denser vegetation that is contributing to the extreme fire behavior we are now seeing in California. California is currently experiencing a drought, and we are covered in extremely dry vegetation after a dry winter and early heat waves this year. We are also on pace for another record-setting wildfire season, and human-caused climate change has made the Western United States warmer and drier contributing to extremes in weather, including these more frequent and destructive fires. Plus, fires in developed areas that burn things like homes and vehicles, combust a lot of materials that have chemicals in them and contribute to air toxics, which are very harmful to our health. Alarmingly, a recently published report showed that the valley could see a 6 to 9 degree temperature increase by the year 2100. So the map on the left shows where we're seeing more extreme heat, and of course, a lot of it is concentrated over the San Joaquin Valley. High heat days particularly contribute to our ozone pollution problem, and ozone, because it's a corrosive gas, is essentially like getting a sunburn on your lungs. It can cause long-term and permanent damage. Of course, the subject for tonight and the focus of our conversation is about the impact of forest fires, and our subsequent speakers will share more about this. But again, want to highlight the significance of particularly the smallest particles of pollution, as those can be the most deadly and the most harmful to our health. So just to underscore this, this is a visual showing that these teeny tiny little particles that aren't even visible to the human eye can not only get into the lungs and damage the lungs, the smallest particles can actually penetrate the lining of the lung and damage our hearts, our brains, and our immune systems. It's also important to understand that there are populations that are particularly sensitive to the impacts from air pollution and wildfire smoke, and that while we call them quote unquote sensitive populations, this is roughly half of the people that live in the San Joaquin Valley. So these categories include youth under the age of 18 because their systems are still developing, pregnant women because of the potential risk to the fetus, people with pre-existing health conditions, our elders who are over the age of 65, and people like our farm workers who work outside and will therefore have higher levels of exposure to wildfire smoke. So some of the things that we can do that our panelists will cover in more detail tonight are find ways that we can protect ourselves and our neighbors when we're experiencing these immediate and acute impacts of unhealthy levels of air pollution due to wildfire smoke. And of course, longer term, what CVAC engages in and invites you all to be a partner in is in taking action to fundamentally address the underlying causes of our air pollution and climate crisis. Here's our contact information if you'd like to be in touch with us, our website. You can email us at info@calcleanair.org or call our Fresno office at 559-960-0361. Thank you all again for joining this evening. It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm excited to get to the content. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and pass the virtual mic to our first speaker, Amy McPherson with the California Air Resources Board, to share some important information about tips for how we all can protect ourselves from wildfire smoke. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Catherine. Let me share my screen real quick with you guys. Here we go. All right. Excellent. And let me close down something else so I don't get any interruptions. All right. So hi, everybody. My name is Amy McPherson. I am
Amy, we can't hear you. I think microphone issues.
Hold on.
Actually, I can hear Amy, so I don't know if that's maybe if you clicked the mute original audio button.
I think I can hear her too.
Oh, okay. I was going to say everything's unmuted over here. So if everybody else can hear me, I'm going to keep going. Just wave if you can't. I'm Amy McPherson. I'm a spokesperson for the California Air Resources Board. I'm up in Sacramento. Among my job responsibilities is helping people better understand the impacts of wildfire smoke. Tonight, I'm going to share some specific actions that people can take to protect yourself and your loved ones from smoke. So there we go. This photo was taken yesterday morning. This is a fire that broke out on Bradford Island. This is in Contra Costa County in the Delta. This was, I believe, around 10 or 11 yesterday morning. Anyone in the northern end of the San Joaquin Valley probably got some smoke from this fire yesterday. Using it as an example of how quickly smoke can travel under certain conditions if the wind is moving in the right direction. It can affect people who live or work nowhere near the actual fire. So even if there's not a fire burning near you, it's really important that you're ready to protect yourself from smoke. So first, let's talk real quick about the biggest health concern with smoke. Wildfires produce a range of air pollutants, everything from cancer-causing toxins to dust and ash that can aggravate existing health problems. With wildfire smoke, the primary pollutant that we worry about is called particulate matter. You'll also hear it referred to very often as PM for short. PM or particulate matter is extremely dangerous because the particles are so small. They're anywhere from 5 to more than 30 times smaller in diameter than a human hair. So we measure 2 sizes of particulate matter in the air at CARB, PM10 and PM2.5. So PM10 are slightly, I won't say large because they're still very small, but the larger of the 2 sizes. PM2.5 is very small. Think of PM10 as, for example, if you've ever sat around a campfire or you've spent the whole day doing yard work, working out in the soil, and you blow your nose and everything's kind of black, that's your body filtering out that PM10, that larger particulate matter. So our bodies are kind of designed to get rid of most of that. PM2.5, however, is the very fine particulate matter. It causes the most concern for your health because those particles are small enough to get into your lungs. And the tiniest, really fine particles can pass right into your bloodstream from there. So that's why it's so dangerous and it can get into your system so easily. Health problems related to wildfire smoke exposure can be as mild as itchy eyes or a irritated respiratory tract, coughing, or as serious as worsening heart and lung disease, things like asthma, emphysema. In extreme cases, complications from smoke exposure can lead to premature death. So it's really important that we all take steps to protect ourselves whenever we're able to do so. So now I'm going to go over some of the steps that we can take. These are 6 ways that you can be what we're calling smoke ready during wildfire season. And we're going to dig into these in a little bit more detail in a minute. The first is to check your local air quality index or AQI. Listen to local officials. If they say the air is bad, you know, they know what they're talking about. Avoid breathing smoke if you can, whether that's by going inside or wearing an N95 mask or finding a clean air center. We'll talk a little bit about the different ways you can do that, but especially if you are someone who's sensitive to smoke, it's really important you find a place to go where you don't have to breathe it. We mentioned using N95 masks. We'll talk about what to look for when you're buying those or when you're getting them and how to wear them appropriately. If you have central air, you need to make sure that your air filter has a MERV 13 or higher rating. We'll talk about that in a minute, but some of the cheaper, lower numbered air filters won't actually pull the particulate matter out of the air. You need to make sure your filter has a tight enough weave in the fabric that it'll catch those really fine particles. You can use a CARB certified air cleaner inside to reduce your particulate matter even more, or if you don't have central air, that's a really good option. They're really effective. They come at all different price points. They're generally pretty available. We'll talk about those in a minute as well. And then finding a clean air space, whether it's creating one in your home or seeing if there's a community center that's been set up. Those are your kind of high level 6 things you can do. So let's first talk about the air quality index or AQI. So in the first column here on the left, you're going to see numbers, and that's your AQI number. You'll see these on maps, or if you pull up your air quality, it'll tell you what the number is. 0 to 50 is considered good. You can continue doing what you would normally do, and you can see the color coding that's associated with these different levels. This is pretty universal. These numbers don't change. The AQI, no matter what site you're pulling up, this will be the same, these colors and these numbers. Obviously, it's meant to be intuitive. Green is good, yellow is a little bit worse, and as you go down, reds and purples are really not good.
Yeah. I am so sorry to interrupt you, but can you lower down your pace? The interpreters are having a hard time.
Thank you. Yes. My apologies. So this is just a really high level look at what AQI means. If you see the number or if you see the color, you can see whether or not it's something that's okay to be outside in or whether you need to stay inside. There's some direction in this last column about sensitive groups sometimes need to limit their activity. When the air quality gets above a certain point, everyone needs to limit their outdoor activity. This is on our website, and at the end of the presentation, there is a link to where to find all of this information that's in my slideshow, and my understanding is you'll also be getting a copy. So I'll make sure everything is linked in there so you can dig into it on your own time if you'd like. During wildfire season, we recommend people use the Air Now Fire and Smoke Map to check your air quality and smoke. This is kind of a big picture. You can see the smoke in the gray blobs here. This is from yesterday. You can see the air quality depicted in all the colored icons, and you can see some fire. These are wildfires here. So what I'd like to do now is take a look on a local level. So if you pull up the fire and smoke map, this is what you're going to see kind of in your area. You'll see different shapes of icons, and these are different kinds of air monitors. Unless anybody really wants me to, I won't get into the technicality of what the different air monitors are. It's not all that important unless you really want to dig into it. But again, look at the colors. This is a PowerPoint, so I can't click on them, but if you do click on them in the map, additional information comes up about who needs to be concerned, what it means for you. Should you stay inside? Should you, avoid the smoke? There's more information on each of these if you click them. One thing to note with this map is it only shows that fine particulate matter, PM 2.5. So if you are interested in tracking your PM10 or ozone, you need to go to the main AirNow webpage to do that. So it's two different sites, but this is really a great comprehensive look at what's going on during fire season. And I believe they just made, this is from the US EPA, so it's all really good quality data and information. And I believe they just made some upgrades to make it more mobile friendly. So it should work better on your phone than it did last year, if you use this at all. So let's talk about masks for a minute. I know there's a lot of folks who don't have any choice and have to be outside during the smoke. I was at a barbecue a couple weeks ago, and my friends were talking, and they all said, well, at least we all have our masks already for wildfire season. And I think it's really important that people understand that your cloth face covering that you've been using for COVID will not protect you against smoke. Generally, fabric used in those cloth masks is not woven tightly enough to filter out those really tiny, dangerous particles. So we do recommend that if you need to protect yourself from smoke using a respirator, you use a N95 respirator that has that's been NIOSH approved. So that means you'll see the number N95 on your mask. You'll also see the word NIOSH, N-I-O-S-H. That stands for the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. And basically what that means is if a mask has been NIOSH approved, it's passed rigorous testing to make sure that it's going to filter out at least 95% of fine particulate matter when you wear it properly. So speaking of when you wear it properly, let's talk about that because that's equally important when we're talking about masks. An N95 mask has to be worn correctly for it to be effective. So for starters, make sure you're separating the straps. One goes below your ears around the base of your neck, and the other goes on the back of your head above your ear. Make sure it's covering the top of your nose and all the way underneath your chin. Pinch the little metal bar at the top to make sure that it conforms to your nose. And then when you breathe in while you're wearing your mask, if it's fitted correctly, it will collapse a little bit on the sides. You'll feel it collapse because that seal is there and you're sucking the air in and you're not pulling. That means you're not pulling air in from outside. So that's a good thing. Again, this is all on our website. We have some links to how to do a seal check, additional information from Cal OSHA. So this is all very easily available if you want to learn more about the masks. So let's see. The single most effective way to protect yourself from smoke, whether it's not always the easiest thing to do, but is to stay inside. Check your air quality, close your windows and doors. If you have air conditioning that has a fresh air intake, some people have a system that pulls air in from outside. Make sure you turn that off so that you're not bringing in dirty air every time your air conditioning runs. If you do have air conditioning, go replace your filters now. Again, MERV 13 or higher is going to filter out those particles, and that will be right on the label on the air filter. It'll tell you what MERV number it is. If you can afford one, get a CARB certified air cleaner. We have a list of all the approved, you can look it up by company and brand and model number on our website. We say CARB certified, which means it's past testing, and we know that in addition to cleaning the air, it's not also emitting anything into your house. Some of these machines can produce ozone, which is also really dangerous. So if it's CARB certified, it's not going to emit anything dangerous in your house while it's running. Avoid doing things inside that are gonna mess up the air quality, vacuuming, frying food, smoking, using your gas stove if you can avoid it. And if you need to, wear an N95 inside. So we also recommend designating a cleaner airspace in your home. You can plan this out now. Even if there's no fire, you can make a plan now so that if and when smoke does happen, you have this ready to go. So designate a room in your house where everyone fits comfortably and can hang out for most of the day. Often a living room or dining room, or if you've only got a couple people at home, a bedroom is good. For me, it's my office. So close the windows and doors. Don't block the exits because you want to be able to get out in an emergency. Avoid those indoor activities that generate other particles inside, like smoking, lighting candles. Run a fan or your air conditioner if you have them, an air cleaner again if you have one. You can use a damp cloth or a mop to pick up any kind of particulate matter that's on surfaces or on your floor. You can use a damp towel. If you have windows that are really drafty or a door that's really drafty, you can use a damp towel at the bottom that will catch some of that from coming in. So this is something you can kind of sit down and plan for now, even if there's no smoke in the air yet. We also recommend, if you are in a sensitive group, call your local air pollution control district and see if there's a clean air center that's available in your community. Often a rec center, a library, or a school gym, somewhere that has proper ventilation and space for everyone. And then last but not least, this is in a pinch, you can construct a temporary box fan filter. We do recommend, there are a couple things you need to keep in mind when making one of these for safety reasons. So you would get a 20 by 20 box fan and a 20 by 20 air filter. Again, make sure it's MERV 13 or higher. You're going to put the air filter on the back of the fan and make sure the arrow is pointing towards the fan so the airflow is consistent with what the arrow on the filter says. You can use duct tape or a bungee cord to secure the filter on the back of the fan. And if you run that inside, don't put it in an open window. Make sure it's on a secure surface like a table or on the floor. They're really effective at filtering out the air. A couple things to keep in mind though, make sure that your fan has a fused plug, which means if you're looking at the plug when you plug it into the wall, it should have a little plastic, it looks like almost a sliding door or compartment in it with a little fuse. That means if somebody trips on the cord or knocks it over or something happens, you're not going to start an electrical fire. All models manufactured in 2012 or later by US law have to have these kind of plugs. So if you've purchased a box fan in the last 9 years, it is probably safe to use. Also, remember to change your filter when it gets dirty. Once your filter kind of starts turning gray and black, you got to swap it out or you're just pumping more dirty air into your house. The US EPA did just finish some testing on these with UL, which is kind of the industry standard safety laboratory, and the safety test came back really good. So these are generally pretty safe to use and they're very effective and more affordable if you can't afford a portable air cleaner. And these are just some additional resources. Again, I believe this will be sent out to all the participants later, and I'll make sure all these links are working and you guys have access to additional information. And with that, I think I'm done. I don't know if we want to do questions now or later.
Thank you, Amy, for that great overview. I did want to encourage people, if they do have questions at this point, to drop them in the chat or use the Q&A feature, so that way we can batch them and find the correct speaker to be able to pair them up with. For the time being, I think we'll go ahead and keep going with the presentation so people can have kind of the high level overview of all of the content we wanted to cover. And I don't have every single participant on the line email address, but we can commit to sharing all of the materials with all of the different co-hosts that help to recruit the participants for tonight. So we'll definitely make sure that all of this information gets distributed and shared. So with that, I next wanted to pass it to my colleague, Naimeen Martinez with the Central California Environmental Justice Network, to help us understand better impacts and protections, particularly for people working outdoors. Thanks, Naimeen.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight and for taking the time to learn about these impacts of wildfires. Certainly, we are not as in the bad shape as we were last summer. This particular time of the year, that's when the fires were surrounding us, and it was even hard just to see the sun. So I just would like to say a few words about CCJN. Have been working to promote environmental justice and health equity for over 20 years. And the example that I will explain about the work that we have been doing with farm workers and the impacts that they're suffering from wildfires is a perfect example of our mission, because we are really just trying to eliminate the negative environmental impacts in this particular sector of the population, but in many other residents of the disadvantaged communities here in the Central Valley. So definitely wildfires is something that affects everyone in our state, and unfortunately in the western part of the United States, as we have seen this year. But those that have to work outdoors are more heavily impacted. That includes farmers, farm workers, construction workers, landscapers, and anyone that spends the majority of their day outdoors. But of all of them, while I recognize that this is something that affects all of these sectors, I'm going to focus my presentation in farm workers, not only because these are the constituents that CCJN serves the most, but also because I believe they're more vulnerable than the other outside workers for a couple of reasons. One, because if they don't go out and work, they don't get paid. If they don't get paid, how are they going to pay for the rent, for the food, and for everything that their families need? Because of their immigration status, many of them, even during the pandemic, they didn't have the luxury to stay at home and shelter because they didn't have benefits, they didn't qualify for unemployment or any of the federal assistance that was given to other workers. And the other thing that I want to highlight is that even if they feel any symptoms as a result of their exposure to wildfires, they are unlikely to go and seek medical attention because a great number of them are uninsured. Therefore, they won't go to seek medical attention unless it's a extreme emergency. So luckily, our state always has the reputation of trying to protect the most vulnerable in our state. So in July of 2019, a new regulation was passed, and it is commonly known as Protection from Wildfire Smoke. The intent of this regulation is to protect anyone who's working outdoors when our air quality index is above 150, 151 or greater. So this new regulation, well, it's not that new, it has been in place for 2 years, really help protect workers in different ways. For one, allowing employers to understand how they can check what the air quality is. 2, provide training to the workers. 3, also set up protections in the workplace for these workers, and obviously communicate all these measures to the workers in a appropriate way. And I will go one by one into these elements. So as far as monitoring the air quality, we heard all the different options that we have. And definitely what the regulation suggests is that employers should be using either AirNow, CARB, or the different air district websites, apps, any measure that they have at their disposal to check what is the real-time air quality at the moment, because it's not enough to see what the forecast is for the day. As we know, during the day, the air quality fluctuates, so it's important to understand what is it during the entire work period, not only at the beginning of the shift. And definitely we're focusing obviously in PM 2.5 levels. The second thing, so just to reiterate, that the obligation is not for the employee, but for the employer to be monitoring the air quality. The second thing is that they have to provide training to workers. Luckily, there are multiple resources like the fact sheets that I have in this image that have been developed by the University of Davis, and the state has developed different materials that employers can use to provide this training. Among the different things that this training has to include is the health effects of wildfires. So more or less a summary of what the first presentation covered. The second thing is how to monitor, as I said before, for the air quality in real time, and provide an N95 mask for voluntary use of the worker if the air quality is above 151. And also communicate the procedures to the employee. In terms of what are the different things in the workplace that the employers can do, it depends. But one of the minimum things is, when possible, they could ask the employees to go into an enclosed building, if that is possible, or a vehicle. But if that's not possible, they could also implement some administrative controls, such as if this company has many fields and perhaps the air quality is slightly better in another part of the region, they could change the employees so they're working in another part of the farm. They could also change the work schedules. They could provide additional resting periods. But the most important one I already mentioned is that they need to provide an N95 mask when the air quality is above 151. This is for voluntary use of the employee. However, if the air quality would reach 500 or more, then the use of the N95 is mandatory. And one thing that is very important, and when I show some details of a survey that we conducted, you will explain, you will understand why. But it's important that there's a loop of good communication between the employer and the employee. So in terms of information for employees, they need to, again, understand what are the measures that the employer put together and how to know what the air quality is. But also the employee is encouraged to continue communicating with the employer in terms of potential health effects that this employee might have or experience as a result of their exposure to wildfires. This could be as simple as a headache, or the chest, some pain in the chest, or difficulty breathing, and among others. So to really understand the impact of these protections, we went ahead and conducted a series of surveys with over 300 farm workers, in total 307 farm workers in 5 different counties, Kern, Tulare, Fresno, Kings, and Madera counties. These surveys, we conducted them between June and July of this year to recognize that or compensate people for their participation. We were giving them a $10 gift card just as a token of appreciation for their time. And I'm sharing with you right now the results. It was a very basic survey that would allow us and other agencies, sister agencies in the Air District, CARB, and others to understand how we can help more farm workers and other outside workers to be better protected from wildfires. So the first question is, how do you know if there is bad air quality? And as you could see here, almost 30%, they don't know about an app or checking in a website. They just depend on their eyes. Is it hazy? Is it, can I see smoke? But as we all know, sometimes air quality could be bad and it's not as obvious as it was last year. So that's a problem. We need to make sure that there's more tools available for farm workers in particular and other outside workers to understand what is the real air quality. Others mentioned that they watch the news to get their air quality information, or that they even just are paying attention if they feel any physical symptoms. But over 13%, they say they don't know. They don't even know how to find out if their air quality is bad. And only a little bit over 11% actually know how to check a phone app. They mentioned weather app to check what the air quality is. And even less or smaller percentage, 2.3%, said that they actually go ahead and check the online air monitoring platforms. The different ones are available. In terms of what do they do to protect themselves when working in the fields, the more than 56%, so more than half of the respondents said that they only covered their mouths using a handkerchief or a disposable mask. That so definitely, as we could see here, it's a minority, the ones that are wearing the N95 mask. And I just want to bring us to the attention of the presentation that we heard before. When we have wildfires, covering your mouth with just a disposable mask or a handkerchief is not going to be enough. We need more protection. We need those N95s, and that's not happening right now. Nevertheless, we did ask, did you know that your employer must provide you with an N95 mask when the air quality is above 150? I have to say that I was surprised that more than half of the respondents did know about this. However, it's a different story when we ask if they actually receive a mask. And we did ask specifically about the summer of last year, August through October of last year, when we have the severe wildfires. And as you could see, more than 41% said no. 39% said yes, which was encouraging. But when you combine the don't know and the other, we still see that it's more than half that did not receive that proper PPE to be protected from wildfires. So I think this is very important for all of us, especially, again, the agencies that are providing information like the Air District or CARB to people to be protected, is how do we prefer to receive this information? So when we asked that question, more than 50% of the respondents said that they prefer a text message, followed by TV, radio, and a very small percentage said that they are comfortable using an online platform or an app. We also asked, what do they recommend to anyone who would like to help farm workers be protected from wildfire exposure? And the most important answer was, we would like to receive proper PPE, that more N95s are actually distributed to them, that other forms of PPEs distributed as well, such as overalls. They also requested having more access to information and notifications when their quality is bad, primarily through text messages, but they also mentioned TV as a good way of reaching them. And then the third recommendation was to modify their work schedule, either cutting down the shifts or modifying the hours in which they work. And there was also some mentions of giving citations or fines for the employers that do not follow these rules. So that's pretty much the results of our survey. And as I said, this was focused on farm workers, but I believe that a lot of this information is relevant as well for other outdoor workers. And I encourage all of us to start thinking how we can communicate this information better this more sensitive population. And thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Naimeen, for that great presentation and for sharing those insightful results from the farm worker survey, which I think just really highlight how important it is to be in conversation directly with the most impacted community members, and really for all of us to figure out how to make sure that we're tailoring our information and providing it in a timely and culturally appropriate manner. A couple of quick things before we segue to our last speaker. There was a question in the chat about the materials being shared. We don't have live links to these presentations right now, but we will follow up with an email to all of the co-hosts that include the PowerPoint slides and the recording for this meeting. So we will make the information available to you all afterwards. Maiku, I also saw you had a hand up, so I wanted to pause and see if you had a question that you wanted to ask of Amy or Naimeen now. Okay, so we should have a few minutes for questions and answers at the end. If people want to drop questions in the chat, we do also have one from Janet in the Q&A feature that Naimeen, I'm going to ask you to take a look at and see if you're comfortable possibly answering via chat. And if not, we can definitely double back on it after Jamie. But in the interest of time, I do want to go ahead and segue to our last panelist representing the San Joaquin Valley Air District with some additional resources to share, Jamie Holt. Thanks, Jamie, for being with us. Take it away.
Thanks, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight, and I really want to thank the Central Valley Air Quality Coalition for inviting us. There's some really amazing work going on, as you could see through all the great work that Naimeen's group, Central California Environmental Justice Network, was demonstrating through the survey they did. So I just have a few slides, and I am sensitive to the late hour. So first of all, just to piggyback on some of the things that Catherine said, you can see here on this slide that 2020, so this was just last year, we had an absolutely record wildfire year. And what Naimeen said was correct. We have been kind of okay this year, but I will tell you, the big fires hit last year in September, October, November. So it's almost just the beginning of wildfire season for us. Really unprecedented, and a lot of it is can be contributed to some of those things that Catherine was saying about climate change and about forest mismanagement. And the Native Americans on these lands, actually, I think we're much better stewards than some of us have been more recently. So this is just a visual comparison of one of the fires that came in last year, or I should say several of the fires. You can see on September 14th, all of that gray-white is smoke for the most part. If it's not super white, if it's just kind of a gray white, it's smoke. And on the right-hand side, you see about a month later, it had pretty much cleared out. Another thing that's playing into this is the fact that we're in a drought, and we're really looking at extreme drought numbers. All of the counties in the valley are experiencing record low drought, and it's only adding on every day that goes by, and I feel like this year is dramatically worse than it has been in years past. Oops. This is similar to what Catherine showed you. It just shows the drought that we're dealing with. And because there is what we call fuel, and if you think a forest really should be these tall trees and not a lot of scrub brush or not a lot of low bushes around the trees, but unfortunately we've had this fuel buildup, which means that these trees have the bushes, the smaller scrub brush around them. And what happens when a wildfire burns, when it burns under these conditions, it burns hotter, it burns faster, and it creates more smoke. So what do we try to do? We work with a variety of different partners to provide timely air quality information, whether it's those newscasts that Naimeen was talking about, whether there's a variety of apps that are out there. Really, I think if you can decide where you want to go to get your air quality information, I'm going to give you a lot of choices, but just check that on a regular basis. That will be key to understanding and being prepared when those smoke impacts hit. We also do a lot of social media outreach, and you can follow us on Valley Air on Nextdoor, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I know that a lot of the stuff that we post about wildfires is also retweeted or shared with all of the partners here today. So thank you again to them. So I told you I was going to share lots of options for you on how you can get information. So these are screenshots from a phone of a variety of different options. The two on the left are the Valley Air app, and it is one of a variety of options. It's not the only one, but it will give you air quality information. That's an app for your phone, whether it's iPhone or Android. We also have the next one, which is Air Now. It's an EPA app. The one that is there, it's fourth from the left or third from the right. That's the one that Amy was sharing. And even on a phone, it looks pretty good. It's fire.airnow.gov. And it's that one that she showed. It's pulling information from a lot of different places, even some of the temporary monitors, the temporary air monitoring equipment that might get put up. The next one is Purple Air, which I'm sure you've heard about. Those are the little sensors that some people even have in their backyards. That's a web page that you can see on your phone. And then we have a fairly new one that's called sjvair.com. And that's actually one that was set up by one of the partners here. And it also pulls a variety of information. So you'll have all of these on the information that gets shared. Pick the one that you like the best. Pick one of these partners to follow on social media. And that's just a great way to start getting information, especially on those days when we begin to hear those have those wildfire smoke impacts. We do have a wildfire page. It has a lot of the information that was just shared, especially some of the California Air Resources Board information at valleyair.org/wildfires. You can see the video on how to make your own little air purifier box fan setup. You can see some of the health recommendations, some of the information about masks. It's just one of, again, several places where you can get lots of good information. This is a snapshot of our webpage. And if some of those graphics look familiar, because we stole them from CARB, but they're okay with that. We stole them from the California Air Resources Board. One of the great things about this page, though, is right at the top, it will tell you about wildfires that are currently impacting the valley. And that fire that Amy mentioned up in the north part of the valley, that smoke actually made it all the way down to Kern County yesterday. So even though the fire may not be in your area, it might still be impacting your air quality. All of these are things Amy mentioned, just some basic rules on how you can protect yourself and your loved ones. And then we do have some materials that we can share as well. This is an infographic. We have it both in English and Spanish. We're more than happy to give you little flyers of it if you'd like to share with your friends and family. We can definitely get that out. We're actually currently looking at translating it into Hmong. And we're definitely here as a resource for any of you. And all of these fine folks that have been panelists today, they know how to reach me, and you can go through the partners that help set us up. In the interest of time, oh, that's my alarm about to go off. I am going to stop and turn it back over, Catherine, to you.
Thanks so much, Jamie. And again, to all of our panelists for all of the really valuable resources and information that you've shared with us this evening. We can definitely follow up and provide these resources to our co-hosts. Also wanted to acknowledge and really appreciate all of our participants for joining this evening. We are still in a pandemic. I know you all have a lot going on, and we only have a few minutes left, but we did want to make space for questions and answers. So if you all have other commitments, you want to go have dinner, see your family, we totally understand, and our feelings won't be hurt if you need to step away now. But for those who do still have questions and would like to hang out for these last 5 minutes, we do want to make time for questions and answers. So you can type your question in the chat. You can raise your hand and we can come to you. And we do already have one question from Janet in the Q&A feature that we can kind of kick things off with. I'll read it out and give a quick response and then invite other panelists. So Janet asks, what thought has been put into helping residents who don't have access to a vehicle or transportation to get to clean air centers? There are certainly residents in the San Joaquin Valley who don't have centralized air, who will need to find a way to safe breathing at clean air centers, and really want to underscore, I've seen firsthand out in our rural communities that a lot of people still have things like swamp coolers that in fact will make your indoor air quality worse by concentrating it inside. So my quick initial response, Janet, would be that as far as I understand, these clean air centers are new and are in the process of being set up. So those are the exact type of considerations that it would be helpful for the agencies in charge of creating those centers to be able to think about, particularly in a region like ours where transportation and accessibility can definitely be a major barrier. Panelists, would you like to add? Naimeen, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that comment, Catherine, and that definitely there should be a prioritization of geographic areas within our county where there's a higher concentration of homes that still rely on swamp coolers. That mostly is in rural communities, but also in pockets of the city of Fresno. So definitely there, having those clean air centers available will be a key, but then having transportation to those centers will be as important. So I don't know if this is going to be handled by cities and counties and which particular agency or department will handle it, but very important concern. So for now, definitely what we have been telling people who have swamp coolers is that I know that when you have over 100 degrees, it's difficult to say don't turn on your swamp cooler. But if we have air quality as bad as we had last year, I think that what we have heard from doctors is that, try to go to a place where you can cool down, because it's not okay to turn it on when the air quality is as bad.
Thank you, Naimeen. Amy or Jamie, anything that you would add?
I do know that there is some discussion at the state level and some budget money for clean air centers. And I know, as Naimeen said, that these are the things that they're trying to figure out right now. I think the goal would be to couple some of these clean air centers with some of the car share programs that we're trying to get out into, specifically some of our community air protection communities like Shafter and South Fresno and Stockton. But it definitely, when air quality is really, as Naimeen said, is really poor, that box fan maybe do double duty in that it might help clean up your air and also can perhaps clean up a one room in your house to kind of help a little bit in your home.
And to your point about the state program, so a little bit about that. It's called the Wildfire Smoke Clean Air Centers for Vulnerable Populations Incentive Pilot Program, which is the longest title ever created. But it's grant funding that we're kind of helping and create the guidelines for this that will help communities upgrade ventilation systems to kind of start creating this network of clean air centers. And I'm looking at the guidelines now because they just came out about a month ago, and priority will be given to applicants. There's a couple of different criteria, but one of them is facilities that are close to and provide easy access for vulnerable populations. So it sounds like that's something they've definitely taken into consideration and will continue to do so when distributing that funding for this particular pilot program.
Is that going to be distributed through CAR?
I believe it's districts. I think I have to learn a little bit more about it, but I believe we are helping with the guidelines and kind of the structure of the program, but the districts, I believe, will be actually choosing facilities and choosing applicants.
That's my understanding as well. And one of the top things that we've been discussing internally, if we could get some schools to sign on, we thought, elementary schools would be great choices, but we'll see.
Yeah, thanks for all that additional information, and recognizing that wildfire season also coincides with extreme heat events and ozone. It would be great if they could double as cooling centers as well. So we do have a question in the chat from Gabriella about if any of the apps and resources that were shared to check the air quality, the air pollution levels, like Valley Air's app and Air Now, have Spanish or any other language accessibility.
SGBR has, you can switch the screen to Spanish.
And the Valley Air app does not right now, but we just translated it. We're waiting to program it so that it can be in Spanish as well.
I don't know about Air Now, but I did look yesterday and I couldn't find it. So it may, or if it does exist, it may not be just super intuitive.
Thanks, panelists. So we have reached the hour. So I think unless there are other urgent questions, we can go ahead and wrap for the evening. And again, everyone has offered their contact information. That's definitely something that we can include in the materials as they go out. So really just want to appreciate everybody's time. Again, to the participants, to our panelists, to our co-sponsors for this evening's event, to the CVAC staff team that has been supporting me behind the scenes with all of the Zoom logistics, and all of our interpreters. We made a lot of effort to make this as accessible as possible, but of course the technology is not as nice as being in person. So hope you all are out there staying safe, cool, and well, and looking forward to the days when we can be back together again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great night.